Hey everybody, and welcome to another Devlog video for the RPG Enemy AI asset. I am super excited to finally have some time to share what I've been working on for the past few days. So I decided to take a break from melee attacks and disarms, and I started working on the magic system. And I've actually been talking to a few of you on Discord that are very interested in this asset, and one person specifically I've been getting a lot of help from. He's actually very experienced modding games such as Skyrim. If you guys have ever played that game, Bethesda, the game studio, usually provides modding tools for their games, and you can do a huge amount of things, right? You can do things as create spells, create new attacks, create AI behaviors, etc. So as I'm talking to him, I'm learning more and more how the creation kit actually does magic, and it's a really flexible system. You can basically create any kind of custom spells within the rules of the game, right? Uh, so after talking to him and understanding more how that works, I decided that I wanted to emulate the creation kit. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because it's really complex. uh, so I'm not saying that I'm going to create the same system, but what I am saying is that I am very much inspired by the creation kit, and my goal is to get you guys to about 70% there. All of the important things should be there, and the goal is to have a spell system where it literally takes you just a few minutes to create your own custom spell. And we're actually going to create a new custom spell right now live as I'm recording this. So I don't want to talk too much because there's a lot to show. So the first thing I'll do is I do want to show you guys is the new magic system. So if I click on my little troll here, you'll notice that now we have on the drop down for combat, I have attack modes, right? Melee is obviously what you've seen. Ranged, I haven't really implemented it yet. And then you have magic, which is what we're going to look at. And then you have hybrids like melee and ranged and melee and magic, which again, no code has been done here. So right now, just so you know, when you select magic, all this troll is going to do is just start casting spells. I haven't done any movement, any evasion, anything. It's literally just casting spells. And all of the code for the magic system is on this actor component that you see here. I'm gonna start trying to make this modular. That way, the base class doesn't get so heavy with so many different events, etc. So again, the goal is to make this simple, but very customizable. So all you have when you look at the setup here for the magic system is you have a set of casting animations, and these are generic animations that your AI will have, such as attack animation on the right hand, a casting loop on the right hand, attack animation on the left, both hands, and then buff, which I haven't implemented yet, but that's going to be a separate animation for doing buffs. So the idea here is that you will add your spells on the spell list that you see here. And here I actually have one spell selected. The spells are their own separate classes. They're going to be children of a spell-based class that you see here, and you would just select your spell from a drop down here. As you can see, I have a bunch of spells that I've created: Fireball, Fire Nova, Heal, whatever. You will then say which equip slot that spell needs to use. In this case, I can choose, I want the spell to be shot from the right hand, the left hand, either hand, or both hands. And then what category the spell is. And you can see I have a bunch of categories here: single target damage, AoE damage, offensive buff, defensive buff, special attack. And this doesn't really do anything yet. This is just a categorization. It's a label for the attack. But the idea here is that later on you'll be able to write your own custom scripts, and you'll be able to tell the AI, for example, logic as simple as if HP is higher than 50%, cast any spells with category single target damage or AoE damage. If health is less than 50%, cast heals, for example. Or if health is less than 10%, cast a desperate attack. Maybe that's like a massive AoE attack or something. So these are just generic labels that you'll be able to use later in your logic, so you can script your AI. And of course, I'm going to include some generic scripts as what a magic user would do versus a melee user, but I'm already setting all the parts here so you can write your own behaviors if you know Blueprint, obviously, and you'll be able to use these categories here to create some basic behavior. There's also the option of delaying cast times if the NPC receives damage. And again, I'm modeling this to games like World of Warcraft, classic MMOs, but you don't have to do that, obviously. Which is if the enemy is casting, the cast time actually gets delayed if it receives damage. And in this case, I'm saying I want the cast to be delayed by 1 second if the enemy receives damage. There's also a interrupt delay. Do we want the spell to be interrupted? And if the enemy is interrupted, we were gonna stop the cast time and wait for 2 seconds before starting again the cast time. And then we're gonna see there are some summoning spells that I'm gonna show you in a second, and this is just the range around the player or the location to summon the classes. And then there's two debug statements here. One, I'm gonna leave checked. Debug which spell is picked from the list. You can add, as you can see, this is an array. You can add as many spells as you want from the list. And right now, all it's doing is picking a random spell every time it needs to cast. So I just want to know what spell was picked if I add more than one spell, and this is just going to print a little statement here to do just that. So let's just go ahead and hit play, and just want to show you the cast bar and how it's going to get delayed when it receives damage. You can see that it's casting here, and if I hit it, you can see that the bar that the bar there was delayed. If I go to my player character and I say that my attack animation is going to interrupt, that seems to be a little buggy, but I still want to show you what I mean here. And I try to interrupt him. Notice the difference here. Oops. There you go. One time. Notice that it's interrupted and it started casting Fireball again from the very beginning. That's an interrupt. Notice that he shot the Fireball, and I'm going to show you the spell in a second here, but it's a projectile in this case, and there's some lingering effects. You can see that I'm kind of burning here. He's going to shoot the Fireball again. It hits me for 5 damage, and then I have this basically dot on me, this fire effect hitting me. And all of that information is basically inside the spell, right? So the coolest thing, obviously, the thing that has been taking me the most time is obviously the spell system. So here you have a bunch of spells that I've created, and we're going to start looking at some of these. So right now what I have is the Fireball, which is firing, and if I open the Fireball class, you'll see that there's a bunch of common properties that every single spell will have. So you have a spell name, a mana cost, casting options. You can do instant, you can do cast time, or you can do channel. Channel, again, is basically that the AI is just channeling the spell. It can't do anything else for the duration of that spell. And if it gets interrupted, then the damage will get interrupted. In this case, you have, I'm going to leave it at cast time. You have cast time in seconds. In this case, I'm saying the Fireball should be casted for 5 seconds, or a channel. There's delivery options. Is this spell aimed towards self, a target actor as a projectile, a target actor as a locked spell, like a channel spell, or a target location? Probably useful if it's like AoE spells. You have some damage properties. What type of damage are you doing? And right now, this is just a placeholder, but I'm gonna have all these things set up. So in your game, if you want to add additional damage types and you want each damage to do something specific, you have all this information already coming to your AI, right? So right now I have physical, fire, frost, nature, arcane, shadow. Again, very similar to World of Warcraft. But right now the type of damage is not doing anything. But you could have something like, if the AI receives frost damage, maybe apply a snare, for example. That's something you could do if you wanted to. Then you have the damage amount. And if it's an AoE spell, what is the damage radius? that the spell will use. You can also add buffs to the spell, so you can create buffs, like a heal would be a buff, for example. We're going to be taking a look at some buffs. And you can have some area properties. This was just added last night, so it's still not 100% tested, so hopefully it doesn't bug out. But basically, you can cast a spell that creates an area in the world, a zone that actually has effects. So for example, if you create like an AoE explosion, maybe that area catches on fire, and if the player or the AI goes into that area, it'll receive fire damage, right? So you see the properties here. You can select whether it creates an active area in the world, how long it'll be active, and if it's going to do damage, what kind of damage and the damage amount, or maybe the area will contain buffs, and what is the frequency of the effect and the radius of the effect. The spells can also, if it's a summoning spell, you can actually enter the summon details here. You can summon any actor class, obviously including other AIs. So if you want to create a spell to summon a minion or a friendly AI, or maybe the enemy summons other enemies to help, that's obviously available there. You have an equip slot. This spell should be used in what equip slot, and it's the same thing, right hand, left hand, either hand, or both hands. That's probably going to be used mostly for the player. And then you have particle effects. So you have categories of particle effects that the spell will have. Casting effect. This is going to be an effect that is displayed on the hand when you're casting the spell, like a fire spell. You want like a little fiery spell that is displayed on the hand. The actual spell effect, in this case, is the actual fireball that you see on the projectile. The impact effect, when it hits, it spawns up another effect. In this case, this is a placeholder. It's not really meant to be there. And then the attached effect. And if you have an attached effect, that's what you saw earlier. And in this case, it's like an on fire effect. So basically, on impact, if this spell hits the target, do you want a lingering particle effect to stick to that target? And you can actually specify it here just by simply selecting any particle system, and the attached effect duration in this case is 10 seconds. The spells can also have status effects. The same thing you saw in melee. Your spell can disarm and apply disarm. You can either disarm the right hand, the left hand. Each spell has a % chance to apply, right? You can have your spell interrupt, stun, snare, whatever. Everything that was there for melee is also there for magic. You can have the spell knockback. You can have knockback options for your spell. You can do screen shake effects. And finally, and this is not implemented at all, but it's still there, you're going to have your own specific sounds for your spell. So this is what I have, and I have other things that I want to implement, but this is more or less the idea, is that you will have a number of spells that you can create. They're going to be their own classes, and it should take you literally just a few minutes to select the options, and you can create a huge variety of spells. So that was the fireball. So let's just take a quick look at how easy it is to modify, right? So right now I'm casting the fireball with this guy. Why don't we go ahead and add a knockback effect? I can just go ahead and literally just click. I want the fireball to do a knockback. I'm just going to compile and save, and let's just hit play here. And you see, it just knocked me back, and I have this lingering effect for 10 seconds, which is what I said. And it can be any particle. And this guy's just casting, by the way. And here I am being knocked back. That's it. It's that simple, guys. Let's try another one. Let's try a heal, for example. Or actually, let's just try this Fire Nova. So this is an AoE spell. I'm just showing you the settings here. I just created this for testing, right? This is called Fire Nova. Mana cost is 10. It'll be casted on self. It's going to be an area of effect damage. It's going to do 10 damage, and it's going to be fire damage. And it'll actually create an area. When it hits, it'll create an area right there that'll be active for 10 seconds, and it'll do 2 damage every 2 seconds, effect frequency, and the radius of that area is going to be 800. You can also say that you want the area to apply any kind of effect, and in this case I don't have any effects. And you can even include a particle system that you want to add, and I don't have anything here. And you can even have a decal show on the floor. And right now I have the option show decal, and I want this decal texture, which looks like a little burnt lava thing, to appear on the floor. So if I wanted this troll to just use this spell, all I had to do would be just to come here, select this guy, go to magic attacks, and on the spell list I can just click here and select Fire Nova. And all of the settings that are in that spell are immediately going to be added to the troll. And you can see that it hit me, and now there's a fiery area, and as I'm here, every 2 seconds is applying 2 damage, and it also has the fiery effect, as you can see. So right there, and of course these are just sample effects, but right there you could see how easy it is. Say that I wanted to change the delivery, right? And say, you know what, I want this troll, I want the Fire Nova to be casted on the target. And you can select target actor. In this case, projectile or locked is basically the same thing. Kind of have to figure out the naming here. But in this case, I want him to cast it on top of the player or the target. So you can see that he just casted it on top of me, and I have to move out. And this is going to linger for 10 seconds. And if I walk in, you can see that it's still doing damage. Let's do another kind of spell. What about heal? This is a buff spell, right? Same template. I just made it heal. I wanted to have a cast time. I could make it instant. But in this case, the spell type is single target buff. And in this case, even if I have some damage information here, it's going to ignore it. It's going to look at the buffs. And notice that this is an array. So you can stack your buffs. And these are the categories of buffs. You can restore health, mana, you can restore your movement speed, you can change the time dilation either permanently or on a timer, or you can do a damage multiplier. I do have plans to add more types of buffs, but this is kind of the initial list. So the idea here is that every buff on the stack will have an effect, and you can pick from here. You will have a duration, and you'll have a magnitude. This is kind of the amount. And magnitude is a very generic term because if it's a heal, like in this case, restore health, the magnitude will basically be how much HP is restored every time this is cast. And in this case, it's just going to restore 10 HP. If I change it to mana, obviously that will be mana. If I change it to damage multiplier, the magnitude here will be the actual multiplier. So in this case, all I'm saying is let's just go ahead and change this to a heal. And we're going to change the spell to heal. And let's just go ahead and click on play and see if it works. And you can see that it healed himself by 10, and now it's going to heal himself again. That's the only spell that is casting. And now it heals himself back to full. That only took literally just changing the kind of spell. Or what about Haste, right? Haste is basically a spell that you see a lot in MMOs. This is just increasing the speed of either the enemy or the player in this case. So I have a haste spell that I want the troll to use, and it's going to have a cast time of 6 seconds. It'll have a delivery of self. It'll be a single target buff, same thing as heal, but in this case I want to set the time dilation on a timer for 5 seconds, and I want the magnitude to be 2. In other words, it's basically a 200% haste effect, right? So if you played those classic Final Fantasy games, you cast haste on you, and you can just go faster, right? So again, let's go back to this guy and show a haste effect. Go back to magic attacks, and we're gonna be able to cast haste. And if I click play, we'll see what happens when he's hasted. Notice his idle animation is much faster. And if you didn't catch that, let's just change the delivery method. Again, this is the whole point of it. Delivery is going to be a target. And in this case, again, it could be any of these two. So in this case, he's actually gonna give me a haste, the player, because I'm the target, right? So if I click play here, you see, look at me how I'm moving, and as soon as he applies the haste on me, look at me, I'm going 200% speed for 5 seconds, and then I go back to normal. So obviously this wouldn't make a lot of sense, but in the future, you can see the haste here again, I'm 200%. In the future, the whole point would be that maybe these guys are in a group and you have like a magic enemy in the group that's gonna be buffing the melee enemies, for example, right? Or healing. So you could have a healer in a group, in an encounter, and you can write a script and say, hey, monitor the health of your group, and then if somebody's slow in your group, cast a heal, or at the beginning of the fight, cast a haste on yourself or something, right? The whole point is to have all these options here. And the last thing I'll show is a summon spell, and this is just fun. I just call it Summon Trolls. Same system. This is going to cost 20 mana, so it's a little expensive. 6 seconds to cast. It's going to cast it on himself, but the spell type is Summon. Notice that we have very specific spell types here. And for Summon, the damage is going to be ignored. This area stuff is going to be ignored, no buffs. But you will have the summon details here, and you can add them again. It's an array. And basically you will add, as you can see here, your summon classes. So you can add here how many actor classes do you want to summon. And in this case, I said that I want to summon a poison troll, a class poison troll. And here's the quantity. So 2 poison trolls and a troll mini boss I want this spell to summon. And I could easily add another, as you can see, summon, and then I can add my own actor classes here. So you're not limited to summoning enemies. You can summon weapons, you can summon literally any blueprint actor, right? In this case, I'm just summoning these guys here, and actually I don't need this at all. Delete it here. I'm just going to summon these 2 guys. So if I go back here and I choose that spell, Summon Trolls, I click play. Remember, it's going to summon on himself. The delivery method is self. So he's going to summon trolls around himself. And you can see that we have 2 poison trolls and we have 1 mini boss troll. And now they're attacking me. Same thing as before, you can change the delivery to target. Maybe target location. It's going to target the location of the player. And maybe we want to make this really ridiculous. So let's just make it like, I don't know, 10 trolls, 10 poison trolls and 1 mini boss on every single cast time. Probably a little OP, but just to drive the point home here, it's gonna cast it on top of me. And I'm just gonna run away because this is kind of ridiculous. And this guy's gonna keep casting, by the way, the spell 1 more time. And 10 more on top. So you can see how this is gonna get kind of crazy. Hold on. I'm gonna have to move these guys away a little bit with my little Fusroda abilities. Unfortunately, I won't be able to keep this in the kit for obvious reasons, but you get the point. So a lot of flexibility. Oh, and I did promise I wanted to create a custom spell right here just to show you guys how easy it is. So why don't we create like an icy spell, area spell, for example. So what we can do is let's clone Fire Nova, and let's call this how about Frost Nova, even though it's not technically a Frost Nova from World of Warcraft, but I'm just gonna call it that because I like the name. And we're gonna just change a few things. The Frost Nova is gonna have a cast time of 2 seconds. The delivery is gonna be on self. I want him to apply that to himself. And it's going to be an area of effect damage. It'll do frost damage. And let's do only 2 damage. It's gonna be a low damage ability. But the AoE area, the damage AoE, let's make this 2000, so it's like a really wide spell. It will not do any buffs, but it will have an area. And the area that's going to remain is going to be active for, let's call it 20 seconds, but it will not do any damage. So I can just make this 0 damage. And you can just ignore this, but I'll just mark it frost. It will not do any buffs. Instead, it'll apply a status effect. How about we apply a snare to anybody that enters there? And this is going to be a snare of strength 50%. Okay, snare for 2 seconds. And no roots, so we're just going to keep it as a snare. And particle systems, it's going to make me look on fire. I'll just leave it there for now, but it doesn't really need to be there. And the area properties, let's see here. Let's change the decal. I created a little frost decal. It's just basically a water texture. We'll mess around with that. And the area is going to be 1500. Let's make it bigger. So what this area is doing is basically it'll do AoE damage for 2. Let's see. It's actually not going to do any damage. Let's see here. Damage properties. All right, it'll do 2 damage on the initial cast, and then it'll create an area, and that area will last for, let's see, 20 seconds, but it will not do damage. It will just apply a status effect of a snare every 2 seconds for 20 seconds on a radius of 1500. And I don't have any particle systems, but I'm going to have this decal here. All right. And now let's go ahead and see if this works. And I'm crossing my fingers here because usually when you're doing this live, obviously that's when things go wrong. But hopefully it'll work. So the delivery is on self. So let's just click play here. And I'm going to let it cast its Frost Nova. And notice that look how slow I'm walking. I have a snare. I'm going to walk out of the area. And I can walk normally. But if I go into that area, I am damaged by 2. And I am snared by 50%. And it is reapplying that effect every 2 seconds. It's on a timer, right? So it's like a damaged area. And typically you will have way nicer effects. These are just placeholders. You can have a very nice decal if you wanted to. Remember, you can attach a particle system to look like it's like frosty, or there's like snow or whatever, like a swirly snow effect, whatever you want it to. And obviously, again, we're just testing one spell at a time, but you can add as many spells as you want. And right now it's just random, but again, the idea is that you will create all of your spells, each one individually, and then you can write some logic for the AI to use the spells in a specific way based on their categories. I also plan to use the same spells for the player. I haven't done that part at all. I'm concerned with the AI right now, but eventually I will create the magic system to also work on the player, on its own component, and I intend to use the exact same spells. That way, the spells are consistent. You don't have to recreate it, and a heal spell for the enemy is going to be the same thing as a heal spell for the player. So yeah, I know this video is a little long, guys, but I just wanted to show you what I have. I have more ideas that are still kind of in the back of my mind. Things like a teleportation spell and buffs like a shield, things like that would be really cool to add. Obviously, I still have to work on the system. It's still buggy in some use cases. So I'm going to keep working on this, but I really wanted to show you guys what I have because I want to know what you guys think. Do you like where this is going? Do you like the magic system? Do you like the options that you see here? Any options that you like to see added, right? I'm going by the creation kit as a model, but obviously it doesn't have to be exact. So I really want to know what you guys think. And if you're making an RPG game, I know a few of you have been talking to me constantly on Discord. If you're just seeing this for the first time and you're making a game, what else would you like to see? What kind of effects would you like to see? What kind of spells would you like to recreate, right? And let me know because I'll see if I can actually do it with this system. But that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you like where this is going. Let me know what you think, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.